no notices. Anything from council? Nothing from council? All right, well, let's head off then. Mr. Fisher, welcome. I think you're reading for Wise Trust, I understand.
Yes, is this all good?
Stuart's okay? Yep. Yeah, getting the thumbs up.
Yeah, it's fine.
Cool.
So I'm Tim Fletcher. I'm presenting the statement on behalf of Julie Nelson, Executive Chair of the Wise Trust. Before I start, I just want to preface that a representative from the Trust couldn't be here, so they wanted me to present this statement, and their most important concern is that the rules set out in PC9 should apply to council in regard to notable trees, especially when a protected tree root zone goes through private property. And I'll just begin the statement.
Right.
The Trust's head office, Kakariki House, is at 293 Grey Street. The proposed protected root zone of T8.6 extends over the eastern boundary onto 293 Grey Street. The tree outside Kakariki House is poorly maintained. Dead branches fall from the tree regularly onto the footpath and onto Trust property. When the Trust have attempted to engage with Hamilton City Council to get large branches and limbs of the tree pruned due to health and safety concerns, Hamilton City Council has stipulated that it is the Trust's responsibility. The Trust is required to carry out constant roof maintenance due to leaf matter and damage from branches. The Trust has had to install gutter guards to catch the leaves from the notable tree. These guards have already had to be replaced because they have rusted over. A network utility power transformer which supplies power to Kakariki House and other properties nearby is within the protected root zone. There are also other network utility services in the protected root zone along the footpath that service businesses and homes in the vicinity. Regular maintenance of notable trees is vital to ensure this infrastructure is not impacted or compromised. The Trust is unsure what checks are undertaken in this area by Hamilton City Council. The roots of the protected root zone have significantly damaged the footpath and created an uneven and unsafe surface for pedestrians. The Trust is concerned that this damage will restrict the accessibility to Kakariki House, in particular for people with disabilities, visibility issues, or mothers with prams and small children. The Trust disputes that they should be responsible for maintaining a notable tree that is not within their property, but has roots, branches, and leaves that do ingress into their property. This is and should be the responsibility of Hamilton City Council to regularly maintain. The Trust submits that Hamilton City Council needs to be more responsive and be held accountable for having regular scheduled maintenance of notable trees. The Trust is concerned that the points in their submission regarding financial obligations were considered to be out of scope of PC9. Financial obligations must be addressed to clarify exactly who has responsibility for the trees. There should be no ambiguity between council and landowners on this matter. If they are not going to be addressed at this time, then the trees in their root zones should not be scheduled for protection. The Trust submits that the regular maintenance of the notable trees and protected tree roots should be an important part of ensuring that the health of the trees are protected and public safety is maintained. The Trust is concerned that without a sufficient maintenance plan in place, the damage will continue to worsen and will eventually affect the network utilities in the protected root zone, impacting on Kakariki House and adjacent properties. The Trust seeks that the panel recommends that Hamilton City Council prepare maintenance plans that clearly set out who has financial responsibility for maintaining notable trees and associated protected root zones.
Thank you for that, Tim. I take it from the final paragraph there that the trust isn't seeking a provision, but a recommendation from the decision.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, fine, thank you. David?
No, I have no questions.
Any questions? No, that's unusually clear, thank you. Right. Right. I think we were adjourning till 9:20, were we?
Mr. Meehan here, who's...
Oh, yes. Okay, that's great. Mr. Meehan, welcome.
Morning, everybody. My written summary is about a tree on my property at 953.
I think you've got what you want, haven't you?
What's that?
I think you've got what you want from the recommendation, haven't you? Don't
Yes,
I
but it
recall?
was suggested that I still show up here today and
Okay,
do a summary, so,
All right.
So here I am.
where you go.
It was just an arborist recommendation anyway, so. My request to have the above tree deleted from the register is based on the following. 1, nuisance and hardship. The tree is situated on private property in the middle of my driveway, 2 metres from the boundary fence and 3 metres from the garage doors. As a result, I am unable to use the left-hand side of my garage for parking and expect that I won't be able to use the right-hand side in time as the tree is growing at the bottom. The root system has damaged the driveway considerably, including the underside of my car when driving over it. My stormwater drains are consistently blocked, which requires me to employ drainage contractors to clear them. And my garage floods regularly. Branches drop off and as the tree is unhealthy at the top. And over time it is becoming more dangerous as it deteriorates further at the top. 2, stem evaluation. I stated in my main submission that I believe the stem valuation of 156 to be too high and a more accurate figure of around 120 is correct. I gave my reasons for this, including an analysis of the condition and amenity valuations in the arborist's report. These, I believe, were far more positive than warranted, and this evaluation doesn't take into account any nuisance and negative aspects. If this was so, the evaluation would be even lower. I know it is normal that STEM methodology doesn't take into account this perceived and actual nuisance and hardship values as a more clinical approach, but I believe my case is unique as there are factors severely limiting the function and enjoyment of my property that other landowners don't have to deal with. I note that in the arborist's second visit and report, he agrees with some of my points and has noted a decline in the health of the tree, and as a result has suggested that relief be supported. I therefore request that his relief-supported response be accepted by the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meehan. What was the time interval between the first visit and the first inspection and the second inspection? Matter of interest?
I believe it would have been 6 months.
6 months.
That's just a rough guess.
Right. But did you notice a material deterioration in the health of the tree over that 6-month period?
I didn't, because the tree to me has always looked a bit dodgy, and so I wasn't really looking in that intervening time.
Okay, all right. Question?
Just out of interest, how long have you owned the property?
I've been there 26 years. The tree wasn't protected when I bought the place. Council protected it about 20 years ago, just out of the blue one day, decided it was warrant of protection.
No, that's very clear.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Mr. Meehan. Thank you for turning up today. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Right. Are you trying to get Mr. Adams, are you?
It's just been on screen. You may have gone message bit.
Okay, great, thank you. Got some evidence here. This is what I come out with.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Adams, welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Need to turn up a little bit, I think. I'm not sure whether it's your volume or our volume.
Our end's turned up, so.
Any guidance? Mr. Adams, try talking and let's see if you come through at all.
Yes, sorry, I was just reading it.
No, it's pretty. You're pretty broken at the moment. Just hang on a second. Is there anything we can do this end or not?
If he talks, we can.
All right. If you, Mr. Adams, if you start talking to us, and the good people at this end will see if we can make it clearer.
Right, yes.
Yeah. No, we're not getting it. Nothing at all? Yeah. Just try reading something out, Mr. Adams, so that we can just try and manipulate the machine here.
Yes, I'm just reading. The screen on public land.
It's not going to work. Shall we open a phone line or something instead, shall we?
I'll get his phone numbers.
I don't know about that.
Do you have a phone contact, Mr. Adams, that we can bring you in on?
Yes, I was a phone.
Can you write it down and hold it up to the screen, because we can't actually hear what you're saying? Your phone number? Can you write your phone number down and show us the phone number on the screen? That's all right. This isn't in the course manual. Oh 212514113 something. What's the last number? 9? 251413. Last number. Move it to the left, if you would. We'll contact you by phone, Mr. Adams, and see if we can bring you through that way.
Here we go.
Yep, we've got you now.
What I'll do, I'll put my earphones on. I can hear it.
Right.
Put it on.
The second, in the previous session, can you hear me now?
Sounds like a budgie. Right, away you go, Mr. Adams. We've got you now.
Very good.
I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
Right, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
You can hear me through this connected to the microphone on your phone.
I've muted my mic.
Right. I think we've got the circuit going now, Mr. Adams.
Right.
No, we don't have phones.
No, I mean, the one that's coming out here.
There's no jack. Why can't I put the phone on the desk and just...
Well, I know, it's called, there's a video somehow.
Wait to see how it goes.
My speaker's off. My microphone's off.
Right, yeah. Okay, Mr. Adams, if you'd like to talk to us. Well,
That's the fun sound.
yeah.
I'll hold the phone for them.
Yeah,
He needs to talk, gosh.
yeah.
Take the
What would you want to tell us, Mr. Adams? We're waiting.
Right. Are you going to put the list to me?
Sorry, just repeat that. Oh, well, did you want to introduce your submission first of all?
He's probably got his volume too loud, and we're looking at his end, and then back to
This isn't going to work. I think that's probably best. Yeah. Steve, we've got, we're ahead of time. Let's take a 10-minute break whilst you see if you can sort it out. Mr. Adams, we're just going to take a break whilst the technicians here try and sort the sound out. Okay. But stay on the line. key points of the submission that you want to make to us. Thank you.
Yes. Well, my statement of evidence is in the form of, the document that was forwarded a few weeks ago, and it's on behalf of the Waikato Heritage Group, and that's 427 and Laura Kellaway, item 452. So my name is John Adam, and I hold a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology from Auckland University. I've been involved in the conservation and preservation movement since leaving secondary school in the early 1970s. And I'm a member of the Australian Garden History Society since the early 1980s. My business is Endangered Gardens, and I've been involved in heritage studies in Christchurch and Dunedin.
You're going quiet, John. You're fading away. I don't know if you're far from the phone.
Yeah, Mr. Adams, I think we've lost you again, or at least you've gone very, very faint. Can I ask where you're ringing in from? Apparently I can't.
You there, John?
Yeah, sorry.
You went very quiet then for a while.
Yes, it sort of went, I'm not sure the phone, no, the phone's still, so should I just continue?
Yeah, just carry on.
Yeah, just carry on.
So I'm a member of I'm a fellow of the Royal New Zealand Institute of Horticulture, and I was awarded the Garden History Medal in 2007. So I'm familiar with the Hamilton landscape, having a family who lived there through the 1980s and 1990s. And I began to do some heritage survey themes, and I organised workshops and presented lectures in those years. I'm a member of ECOMOS New Zealand, and I'm also the New Zealand member. There's, I think, three of us for the International Scientific Committee of Cultural Landscapes. So I participated in the expert conferencing sessions on arboriculture on the 15th of March and the Heritage and Planning session on the 17th of March. So my focus in my submission was that the notable trees on private lands I feel are very important, and as you know, they're not included in the PC9. And also the historic areas, the heritage landscapes had not been assessed or included in the rules. There were different areas that I was focusing on, such as the Hamilton Gardens Nursery, the Ruakura Homestead Drive, and also the Frankton Railway Village, where there's an avenue of memorial trees. So I had to conclude that there was, in my view, insufficient assessment of the notable component of the STEM assessment for trees, and that should be addressed where it wasn't included in the evaluation.
Right, that's it, is it, Mr. Adams?
Are you there? It's faded out.
Yep. Yeah, no, we're here. Is that the sum of your presentation?
Are you still there? Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you, John.
Oh, sorry, right. So, sort of focusing on the specific notable trees. Frankton Railway Village Memorial Avenue, information on this avenue has been provided and the trees have been identified. However, 2 trees referred to in Mr. Redfern's evidence in regards to these are not part of the 2 selected, and they represent a different form of notable tree that are in the grouping. So while the avenue falls within the proposed Frankton Railway Village historic area, it is not sufficient identification, and there's not sufficient identification and protection in my view. So inclusion of the NZR Memorial Avenue is important, as I undertook a STEM score and I came up with 285, and that document is appended in Appendix 3. The other item was the Camellia at 10 Taniwha Street, which is on private land. However, it should be considered for scheduling as it has a score of 279 that I undertook, and it's also appended in Appendix 3.
Can I ask, Mr. Adams, have you discussed, taking one at a time, the Memorial Avenue assessment that you made? Have you discussed that with Mr. Redfern?
Not directly, no.
Okay.
No, only it was discussed at one of those earlier hearings, and I had no opportunity to explain that the trees that he had assessed, were further in the park, and they were really more contemporary trees. They had no real significance of, trees probably 20 or 30 years old. But the ones against the boundary that run behind the railway village, and they're distinctive in the sense that they're both Japanese cedars and Douglas firs from North America, and there's another, I think, large European tree. So those memorials trees were selected from the different countries in a sense where wars were fought. So those trees clearly are from World War I, because if they'd been planted in World War II, the Japanese cedar would definitely not have been chosen. Because of the fact that Japan was part of that war.
Right, all right. And with respect to the Camellia on Taniwha Street, the council's position on that is that because the plan change was only addressing trees on public land, trees on private land are not included and are out of scope of the plan change.
Yes, no, I understand that.
Right.
I think in my report I mentioned that most of the trees on public lands are relatively safe and have a certain amount of knowledge about them. In saying that, the history of many of those plantings is not understood, and I made an attempt to look at some of the major public movements, and of course Arbor Day is a notable one in New Zealand. There's a number of Arbor Day plantings across Hamilton which had not been documented. There's all the war memorials from the 2 world wars, and then there's also trees, as I said, with notable individuals in different communities. But the Arbor Days were funded by either the state or by the council, and Hamilton notably had an important beautifying society set up in the 1910s, which was basically community driven, and it led to the formation of what is now what became Parks Department, so that those communities raised money at annual festivals to pay the wages of a qualified gardener, and he's the one that did all the planting throughout Frankton and right across Hamilton, because the society was regional, and interestingly, it also tapped the the regional experts. For example, in Auckland, we have Thomas Pearson, who was the Parks Director for Auckland City. He was brought down on many occasions into the Waikato to advise on plantings across some of the smaller towns. But in Hamilton, he also wrote reports which were then applied. So all that knowledge is very tentative and sitting there, but it really deserves to be published and then put into some policy and setting a hierarchy of what those plants that remain should be included in. And one of the methodologies is the thematic heritage project, which, as I mentioned, I've cited that in my submission, and I worked on one for Dunedin City and Christchurch City, importantly before the earthquake, and there were a team of archaeologists, heritage architects, and including myself that were given the contract, and we wrote a substantial 200, 300 page report which provided guidance for places and structures across that whole council district.
Right, thank you, Mr. Adam. Can I just pause you there for a second, and I'll just see if any of the other commissioners have questions for you.
Very good.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Adam. About when do you think that camellia was planted? I know that you rated it very high in your scoring, so I assume it's been there a long time.
Yes, I think it was, in our report, the date is given in the appendix of the 1920s. Year 1920, the railway, the trees. Yeah, I would say perhaps the 1920 would be probably about 100 years old.
So, I mean, compared with some of the other trees we're looking at, obviously it's not that big in stature, but for the species, it's actually quite a large example, is what you're saying.
Yes, that's right, and I believe it's been identified as Kanjiro, which is a Japanese cultivar. Importantly, Japan was a really important source of ornamental plants, and even horticultural crops way back into the 1880s. That they had a port that Europeans could trade plants, and that's where we received, in the context of the Hawke's Bay, a lot of the Japanese persimmons and other Japanese varieties of fruit that were shipped by the state, by James Hector from Wellington. He sent up a Napier farmer to this port, and he sailed up there and brought back all these plants, and they were distributed around New Zealand. Things like bamboo, which was ornamental. But there was that whole movement looking at Japanese culture, the chrysanthemums. There were particular plant families which became very popular, internationally, and we had access because of the trade, directly with Japan.
Right. Yes, that's all very interesting. I'm not sure we'd be listing bamboo just yet.
No, that's right. but of course, what's interesting about that, those plants are actually dying now because they only live for about 100 years, and then because it's a grass and they die. And actually, at Auckland University, I noticed around Waterloo Quadrant, the bamboo probably that were brought from Japan in the 1880s. They've been dying over the last 10 or 15 years. They will re-sprout on the edge, they'll regenerate again, but they do die right down.
Thank you.
Very good.
Kia ora, Mr. Adams, Morrison Shaw here. Just wanting one question in relation to 10 Taniwha Street. That's the privately owned property. Have you had discussions with the landowner? Do they agree with having the tree listed? It wasn't clear from the submissions and evidence.
Oh, right. Yes, no, they are keen to have it scheduled. Yes.
And
yes, I know the owner.
Yeah, and do you know whether they're aware of the implications of having a tree listed in terms of the provisions of the plan which might require resource consent for certain activities once a tree is listed?
Yes, no, that they would be familiar with that. Yes.
Thank you.
You? All right, thank you, Mr. Adam, and thank you for persevering with the technology today.
Yeah, no, Rob. Likewise, I appreciate you being persevering at the end as well.
All right.
Yes. So you no longer need my services, and I think I've got another submission next week. So.
I had a feeling you might have. Yes.
Very good.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Okay. See you next week.
Fine. Thank you.
Okay. The next submitter is Mr. Is it Eisendorn? Yep. Come on forward.
Settle funds.
Is it Eisendorn or Eisendorn?
Eisendorn.
Right.
Thank you. It's a foreign name, but like what these trees are, foreign to New Zealand.
I think most names are foreign names, I think you find in this country, yes. Yeah.
So, yes, please. So it's those photos, there's nine copies. Do I just start?
Yes, please. I'm just pulling up your submission from here.
All right.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you, to the commissioners and to the staff. So my name is David Eisendorn, and with my wife Barbara, who's sitting there, we own the property at 189 Fox Street, which is very close to a stand of sequoia trees that have been proposed as being notable trees within the Galloway Sports Park. So there has been a Section 32 report that has been prepared with an assessment T172, and that assessment shows that many of the trees are in poor condition and collapsing. So if you can possibly refer to the photos 4, 5, 7 and 8, and you'll see that just through natural attrition, some of the trees have been quite badly damaged. So in actual fact, they are sequoia trees, and they should be very, very long living, up to 1,000 years. So it's interesting that they are the way that they are. Now, Galloway Park is a local purpose reserve for sports, and it's governed by the Reserves Act 1977. And I hope I've got all my information correct. So that is Section 42 refers to preservation of trees and bush within those reserve areas. That provides existing tree protection. So this is a bit special from some trees that might be on a street reserve. These trees have their own protection already. So we're saying that this double protection is now impacting us quite very severely. "189 Fox Street is not directly bounded to the sports park. There is another private access way to a property behind us. And if you refer photo 3, that does show clearly that access way, which is not sealed. But yet, the planning maps that we have been shown show that the trees are wrongly located within that private access way. So that needs correcting. That needs correcting. The council themselves, in administering the park, is using the area under the trees to store sport equipment and other items, and that is in contravention to the rules, the new rules, 20.3. It also appears that someone is living there and has built like what seems to be a hut and was living there for some time. So those are photos 9, 10 and 15. Okay, the branches of these trees are approximately not extending over our boundary. That is photo number 2. So you can see our boundary where the that hedge line is. And so it's certainly is, to my knowledge, common knowledge, that the root zone of a tree is just to the drip line. Whereas these trees in the root zones, as showing on the charts that we were handed, they're virtually like the drip line or the root zone is virtually covering our whole property, which is up to about 20 metres from where the trees are, or possibly more. So these do require accurate mapping. This approach and the root zone is going to be negatively impacting us to require resource consent for everyday mundane actions, including parking our car, and, which is ludicrous to say, but even planting trees within that area, with all the emphasis today on absorbing carbon and everything else environmental. That's just really stupid. Previously, our property was zoned character zone and quite restrictive, but now under PC12, the general, it has been listed as general residential zone. So that obviously allows us a lot, the ability to do a lot more. And so obviously there has been a reason for changing the zone to residential zone. The need for new housing in a good location next to a sports park, close to physical activity, is as good as reason as any, I would have thought. So having the ability for us to build a new home or to a new additional home, or to construct and fully redevelop the site, even albeit it's a small site, is as good a reason as any. But these rules will either inhibit us or prevent any such development, even though we have been receiving this new zoning. So recently we had a building consent issued, say 2 years ago, and so we, as part of that, we installed a new sewer drain, and so digging up and putting in a trench for about maybe 10 metres across the property under that building consent. So it was inspected and everything was done correctly. But in doing that and doing the trench and digging up, we didn't encounter any roots whatsoever. So it's quite interesting how the zone's been put in. However, if we had now wish to put that drain in, we would have either been prevented or caused extreme difficulty getting resource consent approval, and the lengths that you have to go to getting those approvals is just diabolical. And I know I've experienced it in other cases. We just get trapped in like a Bermuda Triangle zone, which we can't get out of. We go round and round. I get constant emails on the same things. And I just never get anything else done. I spend all my money on this other approval, which we're trying to work on. So, so just to have installed a simple drain would have just caused a big upheaval. So we're just asking that the council would correct the root zone map to the drip line, please. So that's, yes, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eisendawn. Can you just, in terms of one of the diagrams, indicate where that drainage, where you had to put the drain in?
Yeah, sure.
Which is the best picture for just noting that?
So I would just say it's the photo number 2.
Yeah.
So it's in between the house and the garage located at the back.
Right.
And so that drain traversed from the far side of the house,
Yeah.
right across, and I think there was also a V line where the council main sewer line comes across from the park. So we had to connect to, we've got an existing connection that travels from our property and diagonally into that council main.
Okay. All right. That's good. Thank
So
you.
we just had those cobblestones, as you can see.
Right. Ewan, any questions for Mr. Eisendawn?
No.
Okay. Right. Well, you're clear. So that's excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think we're going to see you again, aren't we, later on?
Thursday.
Yes.
But
Right.
I'll come with the team.
Is that a threat? Is it?
No.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Right. I think Mr. Nielsen now for 2 parties, I think.
Seat's a bit lower than I thought, but never mind.
Great.
So we've got some submissions here for both parties.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Steve, some paperwork for distribution.
No. 4.
Fine.
Right.
So we're dealing with the community hospice first, or
First, and then
Okay.
Curnow Tizard second.
Yep.
Curnow
Thank
second.
you. Just next to each other in terms of submissions, so that's good. Thank you. Right, get additional copies made, so on your way.
Right, thank you. We've set out in our submission our views. Our issue really relates to the fact that the vast majority of the routes may come across the concrete hard stand and affect the concrete or yard of hospice. And we acknowledge that the evidence in chief of Laura Gold has made a number of changes to Rule 20.3, which accommodates our issues. We've set out there that the new permitted activity standards to provide for repairs, maintenance and replacement of existing footpaths, tracks, lawns, gardens and fences. A new permitted activity standard that enables additions to or the replacement of existing buildings or structures that is proposed that do not exceed the envelope of the footprint, and that's fine. And a new permitted activity that enables the placement and or construction of any building or structure that do not exceed the envelope. So we only have one suggestion on Rule 20.3, Roman numeral 5, and that is effectively to deal with the issue of maintenance and repairs for existing impervious surfaces, i.e. that we don't need a resource consent to go and fix up the yard or entrance or driveways and bits and pieces. So that's a relatively simple issue.
They're always relatively simple, aren't they? Yes.
Well, they are from my perspective, Mr. Hill. I've never had an issue with simplicity.
Yes, right.
But that's not my life.
Thank you for that.
The next one relates to, which is Kuno Tizard's office, which is on the left-hand side of the photo, which you can see in the photo.
Yeah.
So their issue again is there's this tree, and we hopefully it's healthy and will last the test of time. But let's so their submission is their submission is the same as the hospice. We just are requesting change that we can maintain our yard and driving area. So it's nothing significant at all. And I've no doubt those are all good suggestions.
Right. Well, that's nice and clear. Are there any further questions on that?
Mr. Nelson, at the hospice, I mean, those trees are, I'm just looking at some street view photos of them, they're big trees already.
Massive trees.
So I'd imagine the impermeable surfaces you're talking about are concerned about.
Yes.
Probably already have some.
We have existing services in there.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And they'll be suffering a bit already from the tree roots?
We're a bit worried about them in the future.
Yes.
Mr. Sargent, yeah, it's a concern, because as like any building, hospice will require upgrades. We're about planning to do a major upgrade in services and buildings, interior, so just 15 years I think we've been open for, and it's time for a major upgrade. But they're massive trees.
Yes.
The redwoods, yes, the redwood is.
Yeah. Would the upgrade of your buildings potentially take you nearer to some of the trees?
No, we don't think so. It'll be dealt with by the architects and builders, but it's just it's within the existing envelope. Just gutting them and gutting the interior, sorting them out.
So the area out the front there is likely to remain.
Will remain as car parks, yeah, because of the danger of the trees falling over.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks. Yep. So we like nice, short and sharp.
Short and sharp.
Yep. Excellent. David Mance. Right. Morning.
Good morning.
Right. What do you want to tell us, Mr. Mance?
I'd just like to say that the trees down Claude Street, which are on the schedule, shouldn't be there. Or in my opinion, and most of the street's opinion, shouldn't be there. They cause a lot of damage to the footpaths, and there's a lot of leaf fall in the autumn, and they're just slowly being removed from storm damage anyway, so they should be removed from the schedule.
That's it?
Yes, sir.
It's even shorter and sharper than the last one. Yes, right. We will be looking at those later on, by the way. We're doing a site visit this afternoon and Friday, and Claude Street's on our itinerary, so we're going down there.
Just to clarify, is there a number of trees in the street? Is your submission in relation to all of the trees in the street, or is it in relation to a particular one?
All the trees are liquid amber, prone to branch drop, and wind damage. 2, I think, were removed in the last storm.
Approximately how many trees have we?
15.
And there's some that are liquid amber and some that are other?
They're all liquid amber.
They're all liquid amber.
it would make economic sense to actually remove them all at once instead of removing them one at a time.
Do you know if they're all protected? Are they all protected trees along the street?
They seem to be marked that way.
Thank you.
They're not old trees or anything like that, nothing special.
So you say.
Yeah.
Right. Ewan?
No questions.
Well, very clear. Thank you, Mr. Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. We might have an adjournment. I take it Alison Gray's not here.
11 o'clock is the next one.
11 o'clock. Can we advance? Is it possible to advance?
Working on taking toll of that.
Right. Okay.
I'll try contacting it.
All right. Oh, well, Madonna, you've got an hour to prepare your reply.
Well, just on that, I mean, there's certain things that I can respond to, but I think there are some issues that have been raised during the course of the presentations that we actually want to give some careful thought to, and just to sort of signal, I guess, the direction here. There seems to be a theme coming through, which is firstly that despite what the STEM evaluation might tell us about the tree and whether it warrants scheduling, there are these other factors that are being presented which the submitters say has a bearing on that decision. And I think to a certain extent that might be right. There's a planning judgment that's needed, as well as, I think, in terms of decision making on these trees. It's not just a matter of Mr. Redfern saying, this is the STEM evaluation, therefore it should be notified. There's an overall planning judgment that needs to be layered on top of that, and these factors need to be considered. It seems to me that there could be a couple of submissions at least where those additional factors do give rise to a planning judgment, which may shift the recommendation. But there's also seems to be a whole lot of additional factors that have been raised that are perfectly legitimate, but they just don't bear upon the question of whether or not a tree should be recorded in the schedule. But they nevertheless are very legitimate concerns that need addressing with council or whoever. So what I'm trying to do is make sense of what I think are relevant additional factors that go beyond simply the STEM assessment that you should consider and make a judgment on, and factors that I would submit to you are genuinely held concerns but need to be addressed in a different forum and don't be
like leaf litter and so on.
So that's the shape of it, and I've been coordinating also with Mr. Sharman in terms of the 42A team, and we're trying to produce a sort of a coordinated and single version of recommendations. So there's a few conversations that need to happen internally with other parts of council. There's the transport unit, there's also the parks unit. We're just trying to connect a few dots here. So it may be that there's a little more time required just to give you something that's useful. But that's the direction of travel.
Okay. No, well, that's good to hear, and certainly it won't surprise you to say that we've had similar conversations. So that's the direction we'd be anticipating coming back on, and there's no particular time for that. So whatever time you need to resolve that.
Thank you.
Good. So we'll just adjourn now to 11 o'clock for Alison Gray, and then we'll think about site visits. So, yep, we'll stand down for the next 50 minutes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's fine. Just give me a minute to find a park. On.
And you're taking us to Mariri Avenue, right?
I am.
Which, by the way, will be site visiting this afternoon, so it's timely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Well, you'll be sort of seeing what I'm talking about. So there's Mariri Avenue, established in the 1930s with state housing. And it's actually a beautiful street with those trees. At the moment they are without leaves, partly. And you can see on the map there the notable trees that I'm talking about, which cover both sides of the street. These trees are huge, and their influence extends from the trunks in a radius that covers road, footpaths and property, which is quite a long way out from the drip line, which we as residents are required to respect. The road, impermeable asphalt, as we all know, cuts by the trees very closely within the drip line. And the unseen roots of these trees become entangled with the water supply pipes under the ground, or in some cases there is no anchoring root system at all, and you can see that there on the left, the tree outside number 3, it just flipped up, and the tree behind that too, closer to Norton Road, that had to be removed as well because the ground was lifting around it. This one here on the right is where it burst the water main. And the power lines go right through the middle of the trees. In fact, that power pole had to be replaced because the tree on the other side of that pulled it over when it pulled the power lines over. So it was incredibly lucky that there was no cars passing underneath, or people, for that matter. So one fell across the road, hitting the trees on the other side, pulling down power lines to street level, and this blocked the street for a number of hours and took power out for the entire street for 2 days. Luckily, no cars, people, houses were squashed. On the other side, one fell, and the roots pulled up and cut off the water in the street for about 24 hours. As I said before, another was removed because the ground was lifting. But you can see that the flat root system is really, it was almost about 3 metres. Once it had flipped up, it was 3 metres high above ground level. The other thing about these trees are that they are deciduous, and their leaves clog up the drains and cause pooling and flooding on the street. And also the roots sometimes grow up the drain lines from the curb back into the properties. So my question is, or my submission or whatever, what does it mean when a tree is notable? Are they protected? From whom or by whom? And I would submit that these exotic deciduous trees are past their use-by date. They have been beautiful, but they have become too big and dangerous and not fit for purpose. And the dangers of these trees have been greatly exacerbated by changes in climate volatility, so that the ground becomes saturated, and if their root systems aren't good, bingo. So I do know that council's not planting any more trees like these exotic, huge things, but you know, native trees are more grounded, so to speak, I think. Evergreen, and could be used in these situations instead. But in the short term, I wonder if some of the bigger boughs could be pruned from these trees for the safety of the residents. And I think that the drip line of the trees is a bit of a nonsense, because the trees, when it falls, can affect property, people and vehicles, and perhaps the height of them should be used as the radius mark for the sphere of influence that they have. And I believe that the owners of any trees are liable for any adverse effects that they may cause. So I leave that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. And those are instructive photos, so thank you for providing those. Particularly interested in I think it was your slide 4, I think it was, which sort of, I mean, whilst it's not the sum total of the root system, obviously, the relative paucity of roots is actually quite quite illustrative. Any questions, Dave?
Sorry, did you say there were 3 trees that fell down from the street, in the street?
Sorry, say it again?
Did you say that there were 3 of the trees that came down in February?
There were 2 that came down and 1 that was taken down.
Just for clarity, thanks, Mrs. Gray. Was that as a result of a recent storm event, or?
Yeah, it was. Where is it? There was a storm on the 13th of February 2022, and it was just a normal storm, you know, really, but and luckily the wind direction was in the prevailing wind direction, so that tree didn't fall on my house.
Right.
But it fell across the road and hit the other trees on the other side, which could have fallen and hit the houses on the other side.
Thank you.
I calculate, well, a wild guess is that the big tree, that one, the biggest tree with those huge heavy boughs on this side that the power lines run right through, I would guess it's 12 metres high, but I have no idea really. And I mean, the radius of it will be 12 metres, but the width of it is humongous as well.
So that tree's still standing?
It is, but it actually propped up that power pole, because it's a new power pole, which got pulled over by the other tree. Yeah. But all the trees down that side have got the power lines going right through the middle of them.
Do we have the map of the protected root zone of this one? Because I mean, I'm looking at that, and obviously this is a multi-stem one, so therefore the calculation of the protected root zone would be quite significant. And I'm just wondering what that actually looks like. It's quite a good illustration of a multi-stem.
What's the...
So it'll be...
You're at number 3.
It'll be number 5.
You're at number 3? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that tree right out front of your place, not protected.
It's not.
It's not protected.
It's not existent anymore.
No, it's not there anymore. No. It's the end of that one.
Yeah.
The next street along, Parr Street, has that got the same trees and the same sort of scenario?
No, not nearly so. Oh, hang on. Yes, they have. Yes, I'm thinking of Taniwha, which doesn't.
No.
Parr Street does.
It's got the same. Just looking at the
but I
trees.
don't. Are they notable?
Yes.
They are.
Same way.
Oh, okay. And what does notable mean? Significant?
Well, it was significant. That was the term they used. Now it's notable according to the criteria. I mean, basically, you're defined by the criteria that's been scored.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I think we're looking at number 5, which is where that particular one was.
That's That's 3 there. Yeah.
So that doesn't have the, does that have the protected root zone circle on it? I'm just curious as to whether that was actually. It's a bit hard to see. I wonder.
Oh,
So
yeah,
were
so
these
across that route.
were these calculated off the actual tree, or is that an average that's applied there? That doesn't look as much bigger than the 12 metre. And I would have thought that with that multi-stem there, it would have been bigger than that.
Is that the same as the drip line?
No, it's
No.
not. It's not. It's a different calculation.
That's not your place there, that's number 5, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
So what's that distance between the stem and the? Yeah, that's what I thought. It's only 12, 14. Oh, no, it's 14.
No, it's 11. 11.07.
Which doesn't seem quite right, because that's. Yeah, I would have thought. But anyway, that's interesting to see.
But so, when I rang up about this drip line thing, I was told that I couldn't do anything within the drip line, but my drive and other people's property is within that drip line, and the road is chopping that tree's drip line off, not getting any sustenance from it. So.
It's not that you can't do anything. It's just that for numbers of things you would need to get a resource consent. That's how that rule would actually apply.
Okay.
Yeah, and it may be impractical to get a consent. I don't know. That's another issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's really helpful information. So thank you for that.
Okay. I look forward to seeing you this afternoon.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, well.
You're controlling it.
We're done. Yep.
Yes, I think so, sir. I mean, it's just a question of what's the most practical way forward. We do want to, so one of the questions is, do you want to hear from Mr. Redfern again in response to any of the arboriculture related issues that have been presented?
My sense is that if you're coming back with some practical solutions to what we've heard, there's not much point, and it might be more appropriate at that point to hear from them.
Yeah, so I think what we're planning to do is really work through each of the submissions and presentations. I mean, they're all a unique set of circumstances, so it's not one size fits all. There's some similarities, but we've got to just work through them each individually. And there may or may not be an arboriculture issue that's engaged, in which case we'll have Mr. Redfern give an updated view of that. And to the extent that there's some other planning related issue, we'll give you a position on that as well, and an overall landing place. And as I say, we're endeavouring to reach an accord with the 42A authors so that we get a consistent view from both the proponent and the 42A team. And then we can just give you that back, and if there are questions, you can then recall witnesses if you need to. That's going to take a little bit of time.
Yes.
It may be that it's something that plays out over the course of the hearing, and we might get a window, if there's a gap at some point, that might be an opportunity to just bring this issue back and deal with it.
I mean, just for your advice, I mean, we're not going to be closing off at the back end of next week. There's just too many things. So, I mean, if it's not practicable to bring that forward by that time, we'll deal with it somewhere.
I mean, it may be, but we just want to make sure we give you something that's comprehensive and complete, so that it's useful to you.
Yeah, and it may also lead to some modifications to the provisions, which again you may need time to actually socialise with parts of council. So, yeah, no, that's fine. All right, thank you for that. All right, well, we're adjourned till tomorrow morning then, and we'll be conducting site visits through the rest of the day. So it's a glorious day by the looks of it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good.